I want you to imagine your mind as a room. Right now, in that room, there are objects that have been there so long you've stopped seeing them. They take up space. They block the light from the windows. They make the room feel smaller than it actually is. If someone walked in fresh, they'd notice them immediately. The outdated belief sitting in the corner, the resentment spread across the table, the identity you outgrew years ago still hanging on the wall, like a portrait of someone who no longer lives here. You've been decorating around these objects instead of removing them. These 5 things are the largest objects in your room, and your room has been waiting for you to clear them out since long before you clicked this video. Give up the need to be right. This one disguises itself as intelligence, as standards, as caring about truth. But underneath the performance of correctness is something Jung identified as one of the ego's most desperate survival mechanisms. The need to maintain a self-image that can't be wrong. When you argue past the point of usefulness, when a conversation ends and you're still composing your rebuttal in the shower, when someone challenges your perspective and your body tightens before your mind has formed a thought, that's not intellectual integrity. That's the ego treating every disagreement as a threat to its existence. Because the ego doesn't distinguish between your opinion is wrong and you are wrong. It hears both the same way, and it will burn relationships, waste hours of your mental energy, and keep you locked in patterns that stopped serving you years ago. All to protect a position you might not even hold tomorrow. Release the need to be right, and something immediate opens up. Conversations become lighter because you're actually listening, instead of preparing your next counter. Relationships deepen because the other person can feel the difference between someone who's engaged and someone who's defending. And your mind clears the bandwidth it was burning to maintain a courtroom in your head where you were always both the lawyer and the judge. Give up the identity you built during your worst years. Whatever happened to you during the hardest period of your life, you survived it. And somewhere in that survival, you built a version of yourself that could handle it. Harder, more guarded, less trusting, more independent than necessary. That version served you. It got you through something that the softer version couldn't have handled. But you kept wearing it after the danger passed. The armor became the outfit. The emergency personality became the permanent one. And now you're operating from a self that was designed for crisis in a life that no longer requires it. Jung wrote about this as the shadow of adaptation. The version of yourself that forms in response to trauma becomes so effective that you mistake it for who you actually are. Releasing it feels like regression because the person underneath seems weaker. They're not. They're just the version that existed before the world told you softness was a liability. And that version has the range to reach frequencies the armored one never will. Give up the habit of replaying what's already finished. Your mind treats unresolved emotional experiences the way a computer treats open applications. Each one running in the background, consuming power, slowing everything else down. The argument from 6 months ago that still generates heat when you think about it. The failure you reviewed so many times you could narrate it in your sleep. The moment someone said something that rearranged how you see yourself, and you've been trying to unhear it ever since. Jung called this psychic energy, the finite resource your mind uses for everything from creativity to decision-making, to the simple experience of being present. Every replay consumes it. Every revisitation of a closed chapter costs you currency that could have been spent on the chapter you're in now. Releasing the replay isn't about forgiveness or acceptance or any other word that sounds clean, but feels impossible. It's about recognizing that the event is over and your continued processing of it isn't changing what happened. It's only reducing the energy available for what's happening now. The moment you stop feeding a memory with attention, it begins to lose its charge. The charge was never in the event, it was in the repetition. Give up the belief that your worth is tied to what you produce. This one runs deeper than you think because it's been reinforced from every direction since childhood. The praise came when you achieved. The attention came when you performed. The love, or what felt like love, arrived most reliably when you had something to show for yourself. And the quiet message underneath all that reinforcement was clear. You are what you contribute. Remove the contribution, and you're not sure what's left. That belief turns your entire life into a production schedule. Rest feels lazy. Stillness feels unproductive. Existing without output feels dangerously close to worthless. And the frequency you vibrated stays locked to whatever level your output can sustain. Which means you crash every time the output slows down, and you only let yourself feel good when external results give you permission. Jung described the self as something that exists prior to achievement, prior to identity, prior to the roles you perform. A core that doesn't fluctuate with results because it was never built on results. Accessing that core requires you to sit in the discomfort of producing nothing and discovering that you're still here, still whole. The belief that your worth is earned is the heaviest object in most people's rooms, and every other attachment on this list is lighter once this one goes. Give up waiting for the right moment to change. This is the attachment that protects all the others. As long as you're waiting for the right circumstances, the right motivation, the right sign, every other attachment gets to stay. The resentment stays because you haven't had the emotional bandwidth yet. The outdated identity stays because you're not ready to face what's underneath. The replay runs because you haven't found closure. The waiting is the mechanism that keeps the entire system locked, and it feels productive because it disguises itself as wisdom, as patience. There is no right moment. Jung wrote that the psyche doesn't wait for readiness. It creates crises specifically to force transformation that the conscious mind would postpone indefinitely. The anxiety you've been feeling, the restlessness, the growing sense that something needs to change, that's not a symptom of something wrong. That's the psyche generating the pressure that your waiting has been relieving. Stop relieving it. Let the pressure build until the only option is movement. That pressure isn't your enemy, it's the force that breaks ceilings, and you've been releasing it every time it builds by telling yourself you'll deal with it later. 5 objects in your room. The need to be right, the crisis identity you kept wearing, the replay that won't stop running, the belief that you are what you produce, and the waiting that keeps all 4 of them exactly where they are. Your room has been full for years. You've been squeezing past the furniture, adjusting to the shrinking space, building your life in the gaps between things that should have been removed a long time ago. Clear the room. The person who lives there once the space is open isn't someone you need to become. They're someone you'll recognize because they've been in that room the whole time, pressed against the back wall, behind everything you accumulated, waiting for you to make space. Start with the heaviest piece and drag it to the door. The rest gets easier once the first one's gone.